So this is Unit 9, Lesson 7, grammar lesson. And in this grammar lesson, we are going to look at a conditional. I'm going to start here and then go here because we talked about conditionals in the previous module C. And in that module, we looked at the future real conditional. And in this module, we are going to focus on the past unreal conditional. And if you remember, conditionals are also known as if clauses or if statements. And then you have a result, or in this case, we have the if clause and the result, and then the actual situation is what we're talking about. And so let me start here and let's talk about the actual situation. So in situation 1, our parents were not aware, or they did not know of the damage they were doing, so they did not do things differently. And again, we're talking about the environment. So our parents' generation did things and made decisions that hurt the environment, okay? And so in the past unreal conditional, you can see that we have an if clause, and then we have the past perfect. And so in this case, you use had been, and the American English pronunciation of this word is been, not been. Had been, and then the past participle of the verb. And if you have not memorized the irregular past participle verbs, there is a list in your book on page 225. And so we have if, subject, had been, and the past participle. And then in the result clause, we can use a modal, could, might, or would, and we can use them affirmatively or in the negative, wouldn't. And then we use have and the past participle again. So here you see memorizing and using those irregular verb past participles is very important. So the if clause, if our parents had been aware of the damage they were doing, the result, they would have done things differently. Here's another situation. I didn't know that before, so I had trouble. If I had known that before, I wouldn't have had trouble. And don't forget here, after a modal, we use the base form of the verb and then the past participle. And so it's have had. I wouldn't have had. And then don't forget here the past participle. We have, if the verb is had, we might say if I had had. So in that case, if I had had breakfast, I wouldn't have been so hungry, okay? And I'm sorry, I misspoke here. We don't have to use had been, but had plus the past participle, okay? And that is quick lesson on the past unreal conditional. In Blackboard, I have a number of other handouts that I'll show you in a moment. Along with this lesson, American English speakers will often use the verb wish to talk about the past and the unreal conditional. And so we can see here the form is wish plus had plus past participle. So here's the real situation. They didn't start recycling years ago. And so I might say, I wish we had started recycling years ago. And that means the same, it's expressing regret. It's the same as saying, if I had started recycling years ago, I would not have wasted so much material, or I would not have polluted the earth so badly. Here's another example. When he lived in his old town, they had different recycling rules. And here, I just wish that, or I wish we had these types of recycling rules back in my own town. Okay. Notice here the word that, it's optional. And if you see this word in English, the subjunctive, it's different than in Spanish. The Spanish subjunctive is very common in English. It's different, but usually if we use that after a verb like this, I wish that, then that indicates the subjunctive. And it's just a mood it's a tone for speaking. As I said, there are other examples on Blackboard, and so if you have Blackboard open in Unit 9, and it's Unit 9, Lesson 7, so you have to scroll down a little bit. I have a few charts here for you. So in this first chart, I'm comparing the first conditional that we looked at in Module C. Remember the future conditional? We had if in the condition, we had the simple present, and then because it's future, will not. The third conditional, again, we use this to express regret. It's the if statement in the past perfect, if I had gone to college, and then could, might, or would, or could not, might not, or would not, plus have and the past participle. So I would have become an engineer. And so that's just a quick comparison chart. A couple other charts here. Remember that, oh, that's not a PDF, sorry, one second. Remember that when we, oh, I put the wrong one. Remember that when we have conditionals, we can put the if clause first, or we can put the if clause at the end. And so here's another quick share of that one. So if plus the result, or I can say, I can have the result and then my condition. So I would have become an engineer and developed children's toys if I had gone to college. And just like in other grammar structures, when we use if and the condition at the end of the sentence, we don't put a comma there. When we start the sentence with the if clause, we use a comma before the result. Let me go back to Blackboard real quickly. Also in this chart, list of charts here, I have a list of the irregular verbs. Again, if you have not studied these, you need to. This is page 225 from your book, so please study that. And then this one is, I call it a formula chart. Many times when I talk about grammar and grammar structures, I say it's like math, it's a formula. And so if this structure seems difficult to you, this might be a helpful chart that you can use to practice writing sentences, and you can put one word in each of these boxes, and you can say if she had learned more about the environment, result, she could have reduced her carbon footprint. And then again, this chart would look like this. If she had learned more about protecting the environment, now that doesn't look pretty, she could have, and then past participle, reduced her carbon footprint. Okay, and so it's very, I don't recommend this chart for everyone, but if you're struggling with how to create this sentence structure, and then here the result is first, and you can say she could have reduced her carbon footprint if she had learned more about protecting the environment. Okay.
Sure, this one ways it will be.
Sure. Let me talk about Teresa. If Teresa had not moved, she might not, have lost her book, right? Or
yesterday.
or I can put the result first and say Teresa might not have lost her book if she had not moved. And so again, that chart is useful if forming these sentences. They're very long sentences. They can seem complex, and so this chart might be helpful for those of you if this is a brand new structure.